Pretty tough. Yeah.
We appreciate you coming out today. I know it's, hate the reason you're here and everything everybody's been through, but we appreciate you coming out and taking time out on Sunday afternoon. My name's Scott Sherwood. I'm the attorney in Panhandle, and we're one of the firms that's working in this group to work with clients. I'm going to turn it over to Joe Lovell in a minute and let him tell you about how we have worked together on this. And then shortly, he'll turn it over to Mikal Watts and tell you more about where we are on this case and how that impacts you on this particular fire. Is everybody here Windy Deuce? Some of you 687 Reamer, the south side of Stinnett? Okay. All right. We'll turn it over to Mr. Lovell.
Hi, I'm Joe Lovell. I'm an attorney in Amarillo. First, I want to follow up on the question to make for sure we're clear. Let me see by show of hands who's here affected by the Windy Deuce fire. Okay. And then anybody, I want to make for sure, anybody 687 Reamer? I didn't think I saw anybody for that.
Call out the same as the smokehouse?
No. Are you smokehouse? Okay. I'm just asked that question so we can kind of refine things a little bit so we don't waste people's time covering things that aren't as important to them as some of the other fires. First, I want to tell you a little bit about how we got involved in this. I'm a lawyer in Amarillo, originally from Dumas. Been practicing in Amarillo since I got out of law school in 1987. I've been handling wildfire cases up here in the Panhandle since I think I tried my first wildfire case in 2000. I think it's when it was. It was the 1996 Payne Ranch fire is what I remember, and we tried that in Miami. And then, of course, we had the big 2006 fires, and then, as you all unfortunately know, we've had lots of fires since then. More recently, 2022, April 2022, our friends over in eastern New Mexico caught on fire in Ruidoso, and then later, or actually about the same time, up in northern New Mexico with the Hermit's Peak fire, and I ended up being involved in a whole lot of those fires too. So I've been doing this for decades now, and I've seen these fires come up out here, just like you guys have. When I started seeing what the scope of this thing was and that it was going to be a big catastrophe, I knew that people were going to need help, okay, because I've seen it before. And it was big enough where there's going to be a lot of people that need a lot of help. And so it was at that point in time I decided I needed to put a team together. So I started doing that. And the first call I made was to my friend Scott Sherwood right here from Panhandle. He and his son Cho Sherwood, and I don't know if any of you know him, but Scott's been around here in Carson County and Hutchinson County working around here for a long time. And he and I have worked both with each other and against each other in these grass fire cases. And so I know Scott's experience as well, and I knew that he and Cho would be an important part of our team because we need people from around here like myself and Scott and Cho that not only know the people but know the country, know all the things we kind of know. But the other thing I knew is that given the scale and the scope of this catastrophe is going to be big, lots and lots and lots of folks like yourself harmed, and we were going to be facing large corporations with challenging issues, and it was going to take a lot of resources. And so the next phone call I made was to my friend Mikal Watts over here, who's I say he's from Austin. He takes a little bit of issue with that. His office is in Austin, but he lives in a quaint little place not far from San Antonio, Mountain Home. He'll tell you all about it. In any event, I called Michael, and there's multiple reasons that I called Mikal Watts. I came to know Michael many years ago in Texas trial lawyer events, and we're in that same association. But I came to know him even better back in 2017. There was a disastrous construction incident in downtown Amarillo, and coincidentally it involved the construction of the SPS XL headquarters in downtown Amarillo, where there was an incident that trapped 2 electricians in a room with a malfunctioning switch and circuit breaker, etc., and it was a horrific event. One of those young men died from his burns from that. The other gentleman, Keith Garrison, he survived, although horrifically burned. Anyway, Keith and his family hired me to represent them in that matter. And again, knowing, I mean, you know, Scott and I, we've been around here a long time, and we're good lawyers, and we handle big stuff up here. And, you know, I'm as good as anybody, and so is Scott. But when you get into huge situations like that, you know, when you're dealing with big companies out of Minneapolis or New York or wherever it is, they don't know us. You know, we're just, as far as they're concerned, where's Amma what? Where's the Texas Panhandle? Panhandle, is that the Florida Panhandle? You know, anyway, that's what you get, and I knew that. And so I knew I needed to bring in some help that could provide not only expertise, skill, and resources, but also some gravitas, I guess, known by the people in New York and Minneapolis and Chicago and places like that. So I ended up hooking up with Mikal Watts in that case, and we worked together for Keith and his family for a couple of years. Ended up getting a very good result. And I'm sitting there bragging on Michael. Now, one of the reasons why, and it plays a role in why we're here today and why I brought him into this. In that case that I'm telling you about with Keith Garrison, we ended up bringing suit against 16 companies, engineering firms and construction firms, and one of those firms was General Electric, okay? So they were one of the defendants in that case. We filed suit, and within days after that suit was filed, Mikal Watts gets a phone call from the lead attorney for General Electric wanting to have a sit-down meeting right then and there. How much is it going to take? What's it going to take? And now, Joe doesn't get that kind of phone call from lawyers for GE or somebody else, but Michael does. And in fact, in this case, after we filed those first suits, Mikal Watts gets a phone call from a lawyer with, what's the name of that firm? Cravath, Swain & Moore, 1,200 lawyer firm from New York City. They represent XLSPS. They know Michael. They pick up the phone and call Michael. Okay, so anyway, I say all that to say that's one of the I know all this stuff. That's one of the reasons I called Michael, and we became part of a team. So we are a team of lawyers, 3 law firms in Amarillo, Panhandle, and Mountain Home, not Austin. And we're up here trying and ready, willing, and able to help folks up here in the Panhandles with these fires. Now, as you guys know, there's really 4 main fires, and we're working in all 4 of them. Smokehouse Creek, which was the great big huge one 687 Reamer, that's the one that started south of Stinnett, ended up merging with the Smokehouse Creek fire. Then there's the one, well, there's another one, I don't think we have anybody here with the Grapevine Creek fire, but that was, I think, about 40,000 acres. That was a little fire, 40,000 acres, south of Pampa. And then, of course, the one that I think almost all of you are interested in is Windy Deuce. Now, Michael's going to talk to you in much more in depth about these fires. I just want to say that the Windy Deuce fire, and you guys know it, it presents some more challenges, and because the involvement of the cause and origin of that fire traces back to an oil and gas operator down south of my hometown, south of Dumas, in Moore County. That oil and gas operator is in bankruptcy, was in bankruptcy before the fire. They're in bankruptcy down in Houston, and so there's limited resources in spite of the horrific damages you guys have suffered here in Fritch particularly. But we've got some ideas, and we got some things we think we can do in that case for y'all. So we're here to tell you about what we know about the claims, what we think we can do for you if you choose to have us help you, and to answer your questions. And so with that now, I'm going to turn this over to Mikal Watts from Mountain Home, Texas.
The gag is, when we were in Canadian, he said I was from Austin. I said, I'm not from Austin. My little brother lives in Austin, which is why we have an office there, but I live on a ranch in Mountain Home. So that's why he's telling that joke. Guys, thanks for coming. Let me just ask by a show of hands, was anybody at the meeting we had here in Fritch on March the 10th? Okay, good. All right, I just wanted to make certain that I wasn't repeating myself. So we have one Smokehouse Creek man, and everybody else is Windy Deuce in the back? Okay, all right. So let me kind of take you guys through. We'll do it in an abridged fashion because the Smokehouse Creek case is kind of open and shut. We know what happened. We've now investigated all these fires. This is my fourth trip up here. We were here on March the 10th, March 17, March 24. I told everybody we were going to take a month off for Easter and some other stuff I had to do. But I needed this to happen today, and I'm sorry to do it on a Sunday, but I have to go to Chicago tonight to start trying the first case in the country involving a drug called Zantac, which has been pulled from the market, but it's alleged to have caused the cancers of some 60,000 people who filed suit. And that case starts next week in Chicago. So I said, can we fit this in on a Sunday again? So I'm sorry, but I wanted to kind of give you guys an update, because in the 5 weeks since we've been in Fritch, we've had a couple of meetings over in Borger, but we've learned a lot about the Windy Deuce fire on top of what we already know about the others. So let me just kind of take you through. You're welcome to come up further if you can't see this, but this is our team. This is the reason that he teases me I'm from Austin. My little brother lives in Austin. He works for me. Jerry White, who'll be trying the Zantac case with me, is up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and those are the lawyers that I've got working with me on this, together with Scott's team and Joe's team. In terms of what's going on, this is the genesis. That's Keith Garrison's site of his catastrophe that burned him. Joe called me 6 or 7 years ago. We worked on it, got a tremendous result. Keith's alive and here in the Amarillo area, and one of my heroes. Why am I here? About the time that Keith got hurt, I was in Sacramento, California, doing a practice trial called a mock trial that you do before a real case to make sure that you're hitting all the issues. And I couldn't breathe. My larynx closed up. And I'm not one of these guys that belly aches about anything. I was a kid that always went to school. I wasn't sick, never get sick. But I couldn't breathe. And it turned out that while we were in Sacramento, about 45 miles away, there was a fire that the utility, Pacific Gas and Electric, had started with its equipment, and they burned down 5,500 homes, killed 34 people, And I read an article and I start looking at it and I start doing the lawyer equivalent of Google, getting on something called Westlaw and learning all about wildfire litigation in the state of California. And so we opened up an office north of San Francisco in a place called Santa Rosa, represented about 2,000 people in that fire. And while we were working on it, there was another fire a little farther up, a town you probably heard of called Paradise, the Camp Fire. It killed 84 people. Burned down 14,000 houses, and we ended up representing about 14,000 people there. And then PG&E took bankruptcy, and so I represented 16,000 people suing PG&E for causing all those fires, and we ended up settling that case for about $13.5 billion. That has resulted in people like Joe calling me after every wildfire there is, and we have a SWAT team that comes in and does an investigation to figure out what's causing the fires. Not all of them are utility fires, but a lot of them are. And so over the last 6 or 7 years, I think this is my 21st utility-caused wildfire. Most recently, we've been out in Hawaii. You've heard about, I didn't know it was possible to get worse than what happened in Paradise, but Hawaii just did it. There's 101 people that burned up to their death, wiped out an entire historic town of Lahaina. So that's kind of my background. We know a lot about this. So let me tell you what we've done on your fires. The first one, obviously, that we got working on was the Smokehouse Creek fire. It's pretty simple. You basically can get all the technology to tell you where the winds are blowing, where the smoke is coming from, and you know, from this it's west to east. That fire, happened about a mile north of Stinnett. And so we start getting on all the databases to figure out about the fire. We're able to identify, functionally where that happened. It's along an electrical line that's XL and SPS. We go out there. We've learned that it's, a pole that has toppled in high winds. We went out to that scene. It's a rotted pole. It's got a stamp on it from Osmos, which is a tree inspection company, that says Osmos 2024. So they've been out there at the site within 6 weeks of the fire, because we know it was in 2024, and put a red tag on it, which is code word for saying this is no longer structurally sound. You can't climb it. You can't work off of it. You need to replace it. But SPS and XL did not get around to doing that. This is the exact same thing that happened in Hawaii, pole 7A on Lahaina Luna Road, just above the town of Lahaina. It toppled in high winds, and wouldn't you know it, Osmos was out there inspecting that one as well, and for whatever reason, that pole hadn't been replaced as well. This is a town hall meeting that I had on Maui last month, and when I told them that it had happened in the Panhandle of Texas, it was like lightning struck again. They were really upset about it, and I don't blame them. I mean, you would think that they'd get the message after killing 101 people and get it fixed up, but they didn't, and it happened to you. Here's the pole in your fire, or in the Smokehouse Creek fire. It's rotted out. That's why it fell. And so anyway, I'm just going to, you've heard this before, so I'm going to rifle through it. But the bottom line is it's a substandard pole that they had inspected. They knew that they needed to pull it, and they didn't. So with respect to Smokehouse Creek, the Texas A&M Forestry Service put out a report. You're not going to be able to see it from up there, but the bottom line is the report says it's the power line and the pole that fell because it was rotted. And so that was very corroborative of what we had figured out on our own. I called my buddy from the New York firm Cravath, and I said, hey, this inspection company owes you and my clients a lot of money. And the next day they admitted that they started the fire, which is good. And they started this claims program. Beware of this. They're saying if we pay anything, we get to take your property. That doesn't work in the state of Texas. They did this before in a previous fire, and they offered pennies on the dollars to see who they can bite off. They're not offering anybody from Winnie Deuce any money. Okay, so anyway, there's the claim form. Just be careful before you fill it out and do that. Now, there's a lot of stuff about regulatory requirements. This is primarily dealing with the Smokehouse Creek fire, but the concept is you're going to have high winds certain times, right? And that day, you remember it, it was like a hurricane coming through here, and that happens from time to time. And so they have to do what's called infrastructure storm hardening. to keep the poles from falling down. And anyway, I'm going through this fast, but every 5 years they got to put out a plan. It talks about which poles they're going to do. Why didn't this one get done? And that's what we'll have the case about. They have to put out a plan that says what their policies are, what their testing schedules are, and the like. And so then we went and looked at what their contractors have to say and what they say about it. And they've got people that their only job is to look at pole replacement and to do deals with people like Osmos about how do they do that. They've been promising that they're replacing these aging poles for a long time, but for some reason they didn't get to this one, even though they've replaced 3,000 poles nationwide. They just didn't get it done because they're trying to hold costs down. Okay? I'm going to skip through the rest of this because this is all specific to Smokehouse Creek. But the bottom line is when you look at their internal documents, they know that in certain high wildfire risk zones, this is one of them. Joe talked to you about his history, 96, this, that. It's in the first rodeo, right? That they have an obligation to accelerate inspections and to replace poles. And they didn't do it, and that's why this gentleman is here. That's why the Smokehouse Creek fire happened. And so I know I'm running through that, but since 98% of you here are talking about Windy Deuce, we'll focus on that, and I'll answer any questions you have. Their contractors, this is Osmos. It's clear that they understood that poles lose strength, that they get eaten up by, in effect, what they call biotic degradation, which is really just fungus. You need a food source, wood, you need moisture, you need air, and you need heat, of which Texas has a ready supply of all of it, and those poles will get eaten up, okay? There's a lot of regulatory requirements about that, but the bottom line is they understood that these things are going to get eaten up, and they have to replace them from time to time, and for whatever reason just didn't do it. So that's the Smokehouse Creek case in a nutshell. I'm happy to share all this with you. You've seen it before, which is why I'm racing through it, and then I'll give you the update. But the bottom line is let me talk to you about Windy Deuce. When I was here on March the 10th, we had already figured out what caused the Windy Deuce fire, and let me just reiterate. It wasn't caused by something happened inside of the town of Fritch, right? It spread here and burned a lot of it. But what did happen is there's a location where we know it started. We got the right to inspect it. There are the high voltage lines, and when you get a close-up of it, you see a bunch of impact marks on the line, okay? That is a result of those trees just whipping against that line. When you have that kind of interactivity between trees of line, you can have molten, in effect, melting, which spits out high pressure, hot substances that when they hit the ground can start the fire. And that's exactly what happened. And so we know where it happened. We know what it resulted in. We know who was controlling the premises, and that was Polaris Operating LLC, which is in bankruptcy in Houston. Okay? We've made administrative claims on behalf of some of your potential plaintiffs here, and we know what's happening, and we've done a lot of work with respect to how much money does Polaris have. And you can't see this, but I think that the upside of it is they don't have a lot. That's why they're in bankruptcy. Okay? Now, what I told people 6 weeks ago we were going to do is we're going to look at a second theory. And I said I didn't know whether I could get us there, but I was going to invest dollars to figure it out. And let me just tell you what we've done since we were here on March the 10th. Let me give you a little history lesson, first of all. What is a public safety power shutoff? Now, last month I think they shut the power off and everybody was all upset. And the concept is people get upset when they shut the power off because that ham that you got in the fridge goes bad and you're upset about it. But in high fire zones, people would rather lose the ham than lose the house. And that's the basic concept here. And so what happened is in 2006 there was a big fire in San Diego. Guys like me sued San Diego Gas and Electric for burning down all these houses, and they had to pay out a bunch of money. And so then they approached the California Public Utilities Commission, and they said, hey, we want the ability to shut power off in certain high wind, high heat, low humidity days. That's kind of the Molotov cocktail for potential wildfires. It only happens once or twice a year, okay? And the PUC of California said, we're going to give you the ability to do that. And they did it in 2012. Decision 12-04-024 in response to application 08-12-021. 08 was after they started paying claims, okay? So all of a sudden, in California, you had the permission of the regulators to shut the power off in certain weather events. And so that was fine. And so California is ahead of the game from the standpoint of this concept of a public safety power shutoff. But then in 2017, in Santa Rosa, that's the fire I worked on, Los Angeles, there was something called the Thomas Fire and the Woolsey Fire in Los Angeles and Ventura. Big wildfires, lots of people killed, lots of people burned out of house and home. And then the Senate of the state of California said, well, you know what, we need to kind of gird the loins of this PSPS and make it more something that needs to be looked at as a matter of obligation. And so a Senate Bill 901 was passed in 2017 that made public safety power shutoffs a regulatorily required thing in California, okay? And so I've been in a bunch of litigation out there, and what was very novel 10 years ago is now the standard of care among utility companies in California and other western states. When I say other western states, I've been involved in some big-time litigation in Oregon. Over Labor Day of 2020, half of Oregon burned down. It was horrific. The whole state seemed like it was on fire. There are 3 utilities in the state of Oregon. 2 of them shut the power off that weekend. 1 of them didn't. Pacific Corp, Pacific Power. And we sued them for it. And the bottom line is that the internal documents say that you should keep people and communicate in high-risk areas safe by proactively shut off the power during extreme and dangerous weather conditions that can result in catastrophic wildfires. That case settled in December of 2023 for $550 million, okay? And so that happened in Oregon. We went out to Hawaii, and of course we sued them for the poles falling down for the same osmosis thing that I was just telling you about. But we wanted to know, why didn't you shut the power off? And the reason we were saying that they should is there was a hurricane going south of the islands of Hawaii called Hurricane Dora. They knew there was going to be 100-mile-an-hour winds. They knew that they had high heat, low humidity. The thing was a tinderbox ready to go off if any pole fell down. And so we asked about power safety shutoff program, and Hawaii Electric didn't have one, which is just crazy by 2023. And so we're litigating that. Now, here's what's happened over the last 6 weeks since I was in the other school here in Fritch. The utilities love to defend themselves. Oh, our client, our customer's going to be all ticked off if we shut the power off. Okay, which is true. But there's certain conditions under which you ought to do it. I talked about these once-a-year high weather, very unusual weather conditions. We're out in California and Oregon, that's what they're doing. But God, be careful being in Texas saying you should do what California does, right? I mean, I don't want any of it either. But the point is, it's throughout the West Coast, and this was a special weather event on the date that these fires started. It's just very unusual. And it's not just high winds, okay? It's got to be high winds in high heat, followed by no rain, in effect, so that the grasses are not moist. They're just ready to start a fire, almost like when when I was a kid at the beach, we'd take little twigs, we'd put them under the big wood to get the fire started. That's what the grasslands up here are like, following no rain for a long time if it's hot outside, and then you have one of these high wind events. You need all 3. And so we say that certain weather conditions are such you ought to shut the power off, but then there are something called, in effect, canary in the coal mine or alarm bell events. And that is, does your system send you signals that it's not withstanding the high winds very well? Do you have faults? Utilities have structure, right? You have big transmission lines that go into small subdivisions that are distribution lines that drop power off at your house. Okay? All of those are strung up in the air so that we're not touching it, wooden poles, and the like. In order to detect whether they've got a problem, the utilities put sensors up and down the lines so that the sensors send a signal back to the mothership if something's going wrong. So what I say, and other people that do this, is did you have previous signals that gave you an alarm bell that something's wrong, that our grid is not withstanding the high winds this day? So I told the folks at the last meeting that we were going to get with a group called Whisker Labs. Whisker Labs has several 100,000 sensors across the United States that in effect detect faults, interruptions of electricity, that give a signal. Utilities have those same sensors that get signals. So we had Whisker Labs go through, and they detected 4 faults in the system between northern Amarillo and Dumas along the line where the Windy Deuce fire began. And those faults were signaled to the utility before the Windy Deuce fire started. So it's an alarm bell, something's going wrong, something's going wrong, something's going wrong. Their meteorologists are telling them this is a once-in-a-year event where the perfect Molotov cocktail is there for a big wildfire. So you have 2 different reasons to shut the power off. Now, they're going to say, well, if we shut the power off, everybody's ticked off. Last I checked, there's not a whole lot of people between northern Amarillo and Dumas. Okay? So, the question is, are you shutting it off to downtown Houston where 4 million people without power? Or are you shutting the power off? And by the way, they have the things called reclosers. They can shut off parts of the system without shutting it all down. You can let Amarillo have all the power at once that day without shutting the power off somewhere else or vice versa. Depends on where in the system you're seeing the faults. So this is what's going to become the litigation about what's known as PSPSs. I'm going to spend, I've already agreed to, with these guys giving me permission, about $55,000 to get them to analyze this in detail for us, okay? All right, so that's where we are. That happened on March the 19th when I called up Scott and I called up Joe and I said, hey, are you okay with you guys, with me spending this money to get this analyzed? And we all had kind of a heart and head kind of event. The head, the lawyer that wants to make money, says, oh my God, Smokehouse Creek's a laydown. Let's just sign up everybody with Smokehouse Creek. And then you take a walk through the town of Fritch and you see what happened here and your heart just breaks. And so with their permission, we just kind of kept digging and digging and digging, and this is what we've come up with. So we've got 4 faults along the line. We're getting it detailed and everything like that. But to me, this is the really good news for you. We're digging this up, kind of making silk out of a sow's ear, trying to figure something out in March the 19th. But then on the 24th, I get an email from Sherwood over here. He goes, hey, they just shut the power off. Everybody's pissed off about it. And I said, yeah, that's a public safety power shutoff. So that tells me that before the fire started in late February, they had a PSPS policy. We don't know what it is yet, but they knew how to do it, okay? And so we get this article on the 25th. It says the power is going to be restored on Monday. So this is going to be real hard for them to say that's just Watts being a trial lawyer trying to make something up out of thin air when they already had it in their arsenal about how to prevent it. It's PSPS, Public Safety Power Shutoff. It was feasible to do. They've been doing it in California since 2012. It's been regulatorily required in California since 2017. We know that the Oregon people knew how to do it back in 2020. All I can tell you in those 22 cases that I've done since 2017, I've looked in the file cabinets of every utility in the western United States. They all know how to do this because after PG&E burned down 14,000 houses and killed 84 people, every boardroom in America said, we don't want to be like PG&E. We got to figure out a way to mitigate the risk of wildfires, and PSPS is in all of their file cabinets. It'll be in Excel's file cabinets too. Okay? All right. So the concept goes something like this. The fire starts, you know where it started. It's in a facility that's being operated by an oilfield services company. But they're checking meters. They've got PG&E, they've got XL people in there that can see those trees right along the lines didn't do anything. That's just what you call vegetation maintenance. They'll say it's not our duty to maintain the vegetation because it's private property. We'll say, yeah, but maybe that gives you the duty to keep an eye out when there's high winds, shut the power off. Okay? So that's where we're going to be. All right, I'm going to skip over 687 Reamer. It's same thing as Smokehouse Creek. Pole falls down and the like. And then we've got the Grapevine Creek fire. Again, this is a different deal. It's a loose conduit that wasn't properly collared through a bracket, and it was just whipping on it and caused sparking. And so there we are, okay? We've got Texas A&M. They've backed us up on everything that we're saying. We know what caused these fires, okay? So we're bringing litigation on behalf of everybody on all these 4 fires, and it's going pretty well thus far. Now, what will we do for you if you choose to get involved? Let me talk to you about what we've done on the lawsuit side. I've watched enough utility equipment walk out of a scene of ignition when the utility comes in, takes it all, and the evidence just disappears. And so the little game we play is we have to file a lawsuit immediately to get permission to come in and see what they're doing. And so a lady over in Canadian, Melanie McQuitty, agreed to be the first plaintiff, caught a little bit of guff from her neighbors, but she got us access to a lot of information. I got in their grill on national TV because all these utility companies are owned by the same 15 or 16 hedge funds, and this is my way of communicating to them they've got a problem here, and they're all calling me. I know who they are. There are lots of lawsuits got filed immediately, kind of what I'd call a copycat lawsuit. That's okay. But I didn't want it to be all slowed up, so we filed a motion to consolidate it in what's called a multi-district litigation pretrial proceeding. We've got that underway. We're collecting photographs from all of our clients. This is super important. If you got any of these rural type, where was the fire burning when, that helps us reconstruct the progression of the fire. When you take a digital photograph, this little thing has a computer in it that says time, hour, minute, second when it was taken, and location, longitude, latitude, and it allows me to reconstruct photogrammetrically where the fire was when. Again, that's only important from the standpoint of people that are kind of in the intersection between 687 Reamer and the Smokehouse Creek fire. But it would be useful from the standpoint of Windy Deuce. So if you have pictures of that day, it's important for that. It's also important for this. All of these pictures, I picked out 4, are taken from a road as somebody's exiting or escaping the fire. The fact that your camera took a picture of the fire is the best proof I've got that you were in the so-called zone of danger. Texas has certain elements of damage that are only available to you if you were in the zone of danger. So I have to prove that you weren't in Boston. I have to prove that you were in the immediate vicinity of the fire, and your photographs help me do that. And then lastly, the most valuable cases are people that get hurt while they're fighting the fire. I know that we had somebody pass away during that. If you've got pictures of people fighting the fire, we want to help the team, in effect, and those people that are the heroes for us anyway. All right. Your state legislature, the governor, the lieutenant governor, and the Speaker of the House put together a select committee of 5 legislators to come around and do a bunch of hearings so they could report to the legislature, how do we prevent this from happening again? I don't like talking politics during these deals, but I do know good public service when I see it. State Representative Ken King over in Canadian is the chair of that committee. Dustin Burrows down in Lubbock is on it. Buddy of mine from Corpus Christi, Todd Hunter, is on it. These are 5 people who make a grand total of $600 a month being legislators for you that are traveling around the state doing these hearings. A couple things about these hearings in early April. We had people from the Public Utilities Commission, from the Railroad Commission, giving testimony so that these legislators can make recommendations about how to create new laws to prevent this nonsense from happening again. There were ranchers that showed up to talk about what happened to them. The people who didn't show up, again, your fire, Osmos was invited to participate. They said, we don't want any part of this, which isn't very publicly, public citizen oriented. They're just kind of in a CYA mode, okay? But here's what we do. Who's here in Fritch as opposed to out on a ranch? Anybody got a ranch? Okay, one. So I'm gonna split this up and talk to you about what we do in houses versus ranches, okay? We start off with what's called Landsat, satellite infrared analysis, to kind of just help us pin down where your property is. And then we get all of the publicly available photography, videography. There's lots of news out there and the like. If you're a rancher, we need to know what kind of vegetation you had where, because we're going to have a big fight with Excel about whether your grass damage is for one season as opposed to 4 or 5 seasons. And that has enormous implication about the level of your damages. And so we do all of that. We have to have access to the land type in order to be able to figure out which is which. And the bottom line is that most people think in terms of controlled burns, which I've started on my ranch. It's about 6 inches high, it's super low heat. It's good for the nutrients and all that stuff. That's not what you had here. You had a wildfire that spread like you wouldn't believe, 3,500 degrees, and it burns not only the grass on the edge, but all the root system. So when it comes back up green, it's a bunch of junk that cows can't eat. That's different than a controlled burn. So the type of land, the burn, all that stuff's important for our ranchers, okay? So we do all of that. We do a lot of aerial image analysis for our homeowners that lost their homes. And we're just trying to document what happened videographically. This is the town of Canadian, and so we have a pretty good idea of what's on fire and what's not. So we get all the aerial images. We have a guy named Dr. John Brown who does this work for me fire after fire after fire. He's a big fan of using drones. Some of his people are over here in the back. They've been out on the ranches doing this work. And we take, drone photography to document the damage. You might think, well, yeah, okay, this house burned, that house burned, this did okay. But we also need to count up all the different cars, figure out what they were, how much they're worth. And so it's just a way of documenting everything. We send experts out to every site visit of every client we have, okay? Why do we do that? Well, we have to, in effect, not take your word for it about where your property lines are. We've got to reconstruct it through what's called Land Glide software. And then we compare that with the county plat maps. And why do we do that? Because it's incredible the amount of slop in the system in terms of who owns what. And I can't bring a claim for you when your neighbor owns it, or your great-grandfather on your mother's side split it up among 6 kids and you thought you were the only one that had it. It turns out there's 5 people that died 50 years ago that own part of it. You got to show the right to bring a suit. So we compare Land Glide software versus photos, individual parcels, so that when John Brown and his team are out there, they know what to look at for you as opposed to stepping on your neighbor's property. If you are a rancher, you will get individually interviewed by one of my experts. And the reason for that is that you know your ranch unlike anybody else. Fencing, water tanks, windmills, gates, bridges, barns, buildings, power lines, irrigation pivots, water lines. I know where all that is on my ranch. Well, I don't, but my ranch foreman does, right? There's so much equipment that's on this side of a tree line or this or that. You can't possibly know as an expert coming in unless you're getting a good interview from everybody, and that's particularly important in rural damages like this. Lots of livestock issues for my ranchers. I can take you all through that if you have it. Tens of thousands of cattle expired in this fire. The ones that managed to survive are going to have health problems from ingesting superheated air. Just lots of damages for all of our ranchers and the like. Okay. And then on-ground photography, and this is what will apply here in the town of Fritch. We're trying to document structural losses, which houses burn down and the like, and you can do that through aerial photography. Frankly, I can do that through Google Earth. Google Earth had taken pictures within 6 months of the fire, gives me the before. They're going to do it after. I know what happened. But what I'm trying to do with our own on-the-ground photography is document all the vehicles, equipment, and the like. Particularly in rural areas, that's super important. In my next life, I want to be named John Deere. That stuff is expensive, okay? If you've got livestock, we need to count it. We need to know what expired, what didn't. We need to know how big they were and the like. But this is the most important thing for my ranchers, and that is I've got to document the ground damage to the grasses, the brush, and the trees. Because we're going to have this fight in a court of law about whether this was a flame kiss, controlled burn, or what it actually was, and that's a 3,500 degree wildfire that burned all the root systems that will cause this to be a problem for 3 to 5 years before Mother Nature brings it back, and you've got something that can actually be eaten by cows, okay? Our damages workups have been happening for about a month. Dr. John Brown has been finishing up another project for me in New Mexico where Joe and I have a bunch of clients in the Hermit's Peak fire. While he's finishing that up, he sent Gabe Gregory. Gabe, just stand up so people can see. Okay, Gabe's been on a single ranch owned by one of the Abrahams, I think, for 3 weeks, counting trees, documenting stuff, and like that. We're going to do it over and over and over again. They've done hundreds of these for me in the state of California, the state of Oregon, the state of New Mexico. John called me right after this fire happened, and he's almost done in New Mexico, and as I like to joke, he had a lei around his neck and a Hawaiian shirt on. He's ready to go to Maui, and I said, no, you're going to the Texas Panhandle, bud. I mean, after all, he's got a degree from East Texas State University, and he's got a master's from Texas A&M, and that's a heck of a lot more useful to me in the Texas Panhandle than it is over in Hawaii. So he's here, he's working, he's being a good sport about it. These are pictures that Gabe took. The important part of this is literally they're going in tree by tree by tree documenting, because all those trees have a lost value, okay? Note that their photographs, as I told you, show exactly where it was taken. So we can reconstruct all of this because of the way that they take. We have to document it. We have the burden of proof in a court of law, not only for liability, who done it, who's at fault, but for damages that you're claiming. We have to prove it. And it's literally tree by tree, grassland by grassland, pasture by pasture, what's the surface area of the burn, and the like, okay? And then that happens inside homes as well. For those of you guys inside the town of Fritch, I developed a database about 6 years ago. It cost me $1 million to build it, but it's exactly what I need for my wildfire clients. And in effect, if you dumb it down, it's homes and vehicles, personal property, all the stuff inside your house. You know, when we think about what are we worth, we think our house is $300,000 and that's what we're worth. Well, what about 30 years of anniversary presents, Christmas presents, birthday presents, furniture, all this other stuff that you buy intermittently so you don't think about it? When you try to replace it all, it's like $600,000. And so we have to go through and teach you guys how to reconstruct what was in your house now that it's burned down. I'll show you how we do that. All the trees and outdoor stuff. That driveway that boiled outside your house has to be replaced. You have to do 6 inches of scraping all the ground. You need 6 inches of topsoil. All that's expensive. And so John reconstructs all that. Any injuries and death, we'll collect all the medical records, the costs, the proof. If you lost a business because your business burned down, we represent a bunch of businesses. If you worked at a business that burned down and lost your job, we represent a bunch of workers. And the like, and so in effect, that's going to be a function of tax returns last year versus this year. And then going forward for as long as it takes to rebuild it. And then we got a section called general liability, which is really where I put all the digital pictures to reconstruct everybody's perspective. And it's cool, you can take thousands of pictures and put them all in and almost through an animation, redo the fire for the jury, which is super impressive. Let me just talk to you guys about the stuff inside of your house for a second. You're going to make insurance claims if you had it. You're all tragically underinsured, and I'm sorry about that. I didn't even know I was tragically underinsured, and I do this for a living till I checked my insurance policy. The truth of the matter is most of us buy our insurance policy because our bank makes us, but we don't read it. And it's got little gremlins in there designed to help the insurance company and hurt you. For example, your insurance company is going to pay you the value of what your house was worth the day before the fire, not the cost to rebuild it the day after, which is 40% higher. Lots of your insurance policy may have $600,000 in contents. They agree to pay contents up to $200,000. It's an arbitrary cap, and it's in there. So I got to get you the rest of that against the utility that started the fire. So we get square footage information. We get, if you've got any estimates to rebuild, we get your insurance stuff. Then we got to reconstruct your contents. How do you remember that? It's a lot easier in this world than it was when we had all of our photographs in family photo albums that burned down. Okay? The iPhone, or the Japanese version of it, this has got 52,000 photographs in it. I want every picture of you and your family in and outside that house. Okay? It's not because of the smiles that you're taking on Daddy's birthday. It's because as I look at the picture of you right now, I can go back in, I got to replace that door on the side, that poster that says eat your veggies, the 4 windows in the back, the 2 doors, the push, the this, the that. The pictures are the way we reconstruct the cost of what burned. They're all digital if you got one of these. If you don't, you have things called kids. Okay? When your kids come to visit you, they take pictures of your birthday. You need to get from your kids their cameras and to just pull down the pictures of your house, inside and outside. Why? Outside, you have things called trees. Pictures tell me how tall they were, how wide they were. John Brown can tell me how much they cost to replace. But I need the underlying evidence about what you had there before it all burned down. Inside the house, we'll use this database to reconstruct everything that was there. We'll go through the kitchen. What's usually in the kitchen? Toasters, fridges, microwaves, griddles. As I like to joke, I'm not a guy that spends a lot of time in the kitchen until after the meal is eaten. I'm the dishwatcher to bribe my wife to keep making it. You know, I didn't even know what a griddle was before we designed this, but it turns out there's 22 different kinds of griddles. If you ask somebody that's been in a wildfire, what kind of griddle did you have, they won't know. If you show them 22 different pictures, they'll be able to pick the one they had, and then we take it to an insurance coster and we reconstruct it. We do it with area rugs. We do it with dining room tables, alarm clocks, skirts. This is Big Brother watching your house. Google Earth took this picture after the North Bay fires in Santa Rosa, California. This is all I see. That's not a whole lot of information. But because Google Earth also took a picture before the fire, we have the same place. And you can do things like, John can use his little laser to say this is 66 feet of shrubs. Go down to the local, gardening area and figure out how much a foot of shrub costs, $23.60, and multiply it 66 times. That goes into a spreadsheet because that's going to have to be replaced. And here's what John does. Trees, outdoor items, okay? Landscaping beds, sidewalks, driveways, patios, decks, swimming pools, hot tubs, outbuildings, metal shed, the equipment in it. We add it all up one by one by one by one, and we reconstruct what you had that burned because it all had value, and more important to you, it all costs money to replace. And if you don't do this work, you can't meet your burden of proof to be entitled to recover it, which is why you need somebody who has done this before. Okay? As I always tell the joke, if I'm going to have a heart surgery tomorrow, don't give me a doctor who does ankle surgeries. Give me somebody who's been involved in the heart. I'm a lot better at this than I was 7 years ago. This is the school of hard knocks, figuring it out. 21,000 fire survivors. Okay? It's a system that works. How do I know that? We get this thing ready to go, the spreadsheets, and it adds up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we develop an economic analysis, develop it to provide a framework for monetary review. Damage to the structure or the infrastructure. Soil and range if you're a rancher. Just livestock if you're a rancher. Your future damages and the like. And it all goes into a spreadsheet that Brown and others will create. I send that spreadsheet to the other side, and of course they always cough it up. They say, oh my God, those numbers are way too high. And the numbers may be high. It's what the data shows. What they want to do is they want to do things like initiate claims programs and offer you 5 cents on the dollar and see who bites. What I want to do is maybe we start high to get you to 100 cents on the dollar after you pay attorney's fees so you can afford to rebuild the house, to rebuy the stuff that you had there. My job is to put you back where you were before you came. The reason I know it works is once your claim is done and it's settlement ready, I send it to the other side, and then I do things like what I'm going to do this week. I literally leave here and I fly to Chicago for hearings in that Zantac case. I've got them all week long. But Wednesday afternoon, I'm getting on a plane to Portland, Oregon, where I'll have dinner with the General Counsel of Pacific Corp, Pacific Power, and we'll negotiate the cases based on the reports that are created. And that's the way you get paid, okay? I know it works. It's worked more than 10,000 times. All right. John Brown will spend months, if not years, in the Texas Panhandle. I don't know how long Gabe's been in New Mexico, but I know John's been there over a year and a half. He will stay until the job gets done, which is why I continue to hire him. He cares about this, okay? Gabe's already been here with his fiancée. I'm surprised she hadn't left him. They've been here rooting around for almost a month, and they'll stay. You need to get her to say I do in a hurry before she changes her mind. But these people are earnest. They do the job right, and they do the job well. So this is the team we put together. I think Joe was feeding you a line of bull when he talks about, oh, I'm just a local guy, I needed Watts. That's nonsense. He's a great lawyer, so is Sherwood. But sometimes the more the merrier in these teams. There's a lot of work to be done, right? Because what I've learned is that if you try to do it all yourself, it takes a long time. And our job is to get you paid, but get you paid as quickly as we can. And so sometimes putting us all together doesn't cost you any more money. We split the fee as opposed to just one of us keeping it all by ourselves. The main pitch that I would make you is we know what we're doing. We've done it for more people than any lawyer in the history of the country. We've settled the biggest cases in the history of wildfire litigation. And we're here because we're all from Texas. And frankly, I don't want any wildfires in Texas, but if I've got to do this, I'd rather help my fellow Texans. Speaking of that, make sure I didn't forget anything. Yeah, we're good. Open up this blue folder just real quick. I just want to take you through what's in it. You're going to have like a little glossy thing that just tells you what happened in these fires. I want you to know about it. I'm not sure we got one for Winton Juice. We'll get one before we come back. Oh, there is. Okay, good. This is my communicating with you that this is a real deal. Okay? The good Lord has blessed me with a lot of success. I get to work on what I want to work on. I've gotten to work on some of the most significant litigation this country's ever seen in the last 3 decades. I made my name when I was 30 years old doing those, you remember the Firestone Tire Ford Explorer case? There were hundreds of people that were killed. I made a bunch of money on that. My wife says I should have retired, but I love what I do. But what I really love is that we forced the recall of 17 million tires. We forced Congress to change the law with respect to what tire manufacturers have to do and the information they have to give you. If anybody's got a car that's less than 20 years old, you've got a tire inflation indicator on your front dash. It says when one of those 4 tires is without air. That was forced by our litigation, okay? Because the bottom line is you didn't have a way of knowing that one of the tires was deflating, until we put that into what's called the TREAD Act of 2001, and it saved thousands of lives. The good news is what happened in Fritch, it's a tragedy. What happened in the Smokehouse Creek fire, tragedy. If you don't band together as a community and come after these guys, it will happen again. I know that. Just look at the Smokehouse Creek fire. It happened 7.5 months after the Maui fire, which was caused by a pole inspected by Osmos that was not taken down. 1,000,000 acres, Smokehouse Creek, caused by a pole inspected by Osmos in 2024 that had not been taken down. It's only when you make it expensive enough that they don't want to pay lawsuits anymore that they get their house in order. Same thing with respect to what happened here in Fritch. We've been talking about public safety power shutoffs for 12 years now. They know how to do it. They know in other states that they should do it. If they had done it here, your houses would not have burned down. The people who died in Fritch wouldn't have died. You all wouldn't be homeless. That's why we're here, okay? My wife's tried to make me retire a long time ago. I am not here for any reason other than I know how to stop this from happening again. And you guys can help us, okay? Now, in here, there's something called a contract of employment and consent to fee sharing. What does that mean? The lawyer rules in the state of Texas prevent us from doing legal work for people that we don't represent, because you're the boss. You hire hired help, okay? If somebody wants a maid to clean their house, they hire them to do it. We're cleaning your litigation house in effect, okay? But you have to hire us. In writing, say the rules. And so this is a one-page contract. You sign page 2, we countersign it. That's our deal. I tell people, watch out for out-of-town lawyers that have 16 pages of contracts, a bunch of Latin in it, show you how smart they are, okay? This is one page. It's simple talk, 7 paragraphs. Let me take you through it real quick. Paragraph 1, it's called the firm's authority. All that does is it's authorizing me and Scott and Joe to file a lawsuit on your behalf, okay? To use our best professional judgment to go after these companies that you don't know how to go after. No offense, okay? I don't know how to weld. My son's a hell of a welder, but I rely on him to do my welding, right? Well, rely on us to do our legal stuff with 100 years experience between the three of us, okay? But paragraph 2 is more important than paragraph 1. That's the client's cooperation. When we call you asking for information, we need you to pick up the phone and answer it and give us the information. I know all about what happened in the fire. I know nothing about what your damages are, and I can't prove it without your help. So if you don't help us, if you don't go through this process, you're not going to get the money you're going to get if you fully cooperate, which is what paragraph 2 says, okay? Paragraph 3 is the fee. Beware of lawyers that offer to do this kind of work for you on the hour. They're going to rip you off, okay? This is big-time specialized litigation. Don't rely on somebody that wants you to pay them $150 an hour and they're cheaper than giving up a percentage of your deal. They don't know what they're doing, okay? The fee is 1/3 of the recovery. Through our processes, we've been able to achieve well more than that so that you end up, after the payment of fees and expenses, ahead of the game. That's the goal. So how do we do that? Well, number one, we put our money where our mouth is. Actually, we put a New York banker's money that I borrow money from to do this. Several $100 million across all the different cases I do, to hire the experts like John Brown, and there's thousands of them going on at any one time, okay? But we know what the process is, and it's not cheap. So we'll put that money forward on your behalf. I'll borrow it from the bank. And then at the end of the day, when we settle it, you pay a 1/3 fee that's split between the three of us. I get a higher percentage because I'm putting up the money. That's the only reason, this BS that I'm better lawyers than them. I don't buy it. But we put up the money at risk, okay? And then the expenses have to be repaid. Why is that important? I need an expert on fire causation. I need an expert on fire spread. I need an expert on public safety power shutoff. I need an expert on the obligation to check vegetation maintenance when you go on private property and like that. We're getting ready to try the first Maui case. It's going to be 8 or 9 experts. Spend a lot of money, okay? But because we represent so many people at once, the economies of scale are really good. Let me give you an example. My first case was a case called the Tubbs Fire out in 2017, and PG&E was denying that they caused it. We said it was their pole. They said it's a private pole at the top of the hill. We fought about it for 2 years. My fire guy, Mike Schultz, was out there interviewing witnesses, grabbing videos and like that. He never left for 6 months. He was like John Brown on the liability side. And he billed me $1 million. Sounds like a lot of money. If you were my only client, that would sink the ship. But I had 2,000 clients, so 2,000 people got the world's best fire cause and origin experts for $500. That's economies of scale, okay? That's what'll work here. The entire town of Fritch that got burned down has the same expert. We get it all done. You split it up hundreds and hundreds of times. It's cheap. Normally, we can keep the expenses between about 2 and 5%. Now, if your case that gets tried, it gets higher than that, but 1 out of 100 get tried, okay? So that's what we do. We put forth the money. The expenses have to be repaid to the bank. But in order to keep the economies of scale where we want them, paragraph 5, multiple clients. This is what's called an ethical rule. I'm allowed, Scott's allowed, Joe's allowed to represent a bunch of you at once, and that's good. You want that to happen. Okay, if you all go get separate lawyers, separate experts, the economies of scale are blown, right? But I have to get your permission. I have to tell you I'm representing more than one people, and you say it's okay, because I want those economies of scale. This contract, I am telling you, we already represent hundreds of folks, okay? By signing it, you're authorizing us to do that and represent you, but we owe an independent fiduciary obligation to each of you. Paragraph 6 and 7 is more ethical rules. Paragraph 6 is if we ever have a dispute and you want to sue me, you don't have to go to New York, or you don't have to give up your right to sue like a lot of these contracts you'll see, arbitration or whatever. You sue me in Amarillo and I'll have to come up here and defend myself. I've done that in every fire and it's worked out fine because we do a good job. We don't get sued very often. When we do, we defend ourselves unless we think we screwed up, which we don't, okay? Paragraph 7, no solicitation. I drove into town and saw a billboard from a lawyer from Houston. Get Dick. I mean, just beware of people knocking on your door. Beware of people sending you stuff. You know, look, the way it's supposed to be done is you get invited to a public forum. You get to listen to everybody. You decide whether you think somebody's full of it. You decide whether you want to participate. And then you tell your neighbors. The real value of doing this is each of you's got 10 neighbors. You say, okay, we've got a guy that's figured out how to do the Fritch situation with the PSPS. And you decide whether you think that's legit. I know it is, okay? And then we build the economies of scale. That's the way it's supposed to happen, okay? Page 2 is just as important as page 1. You got to sign it. We'll countersign it. We'll have a deal. But I need full names of everybody in the house and their age, okay? I need your cell number. If your house burned down, I'm not really interested in your home phone anymore, right? Probably changed, okay? The reason I want your cell number is I can either put a 60-cent stamp in the mail, 20% of them never get there, it takes 8 days, or I can send you an email, which gets there in 8 seconds, or a text which gets there and it's all free. I won't sell your email address and I will not sell your phone number, okay? You have my word. All right. Then there's something called a claims questionnaire. This is pretty thick. Don't worry about it right now. It's just eventually it's just like a long-term cheat sheet of all the stuff we're going to need from you. And it's basically trying to build your damages out, okay? So I wanted to get here today for a reason, okay? We did 3 sets of meetings on the 10th, 17th, and 24th of March. Even though I'm on a rotten hell for doing these on Sunday, I wasn't going to do it on Easter. My daughter's 30th birthday was the next Saturday. My daughter gave birth the next week. My second daughter is about ready to give birth next week. I'm going to trial in Chicago in 30 minutes, okay? It is important that if you all want to participate in the Windy Deuce fire case involving PSPS, that you talk it up amongst your neighbors, okay? It's a more difficult case than the Smokehouse Creek fire. I will not lie to you, okay? But I've been doing this long enough. I'm telling you, there's nothing exotic about this PSPS theory. I know what the weather conditions were that day. I'm the only person that's hired the sensor people that can prove that there were 4 faults on this system well before this fire began, which tells me they should have shut the power off. You may have been pissed off about that lack of a ham in the fridge, but you wouldn't be pissed off about not having a house anymore. And I am truly sorry this happened to you. Okay? Any questions I can answer before I fly out to Chicago?
I have a first comment and then a couple of questions.
Sure. Hey, let's bring me a Diet Coke. Thanks. I'm a caffeine addict, but I got a sore throat.
A comment to follow up on something you said earlier that any good lawyer will tell you, and that is be careful what you sign. There's something else you need to be careful of, and that's be careful what you click. What you click, be careful. You may be clicking something that you just signed up with somebody that you did not intend to do. Or you have given them permission to contact when you did not intend to do that. If you did it just by pressing a little button on your cell phone, all I'm telling you is just be careful, make sure you know what you're doing. Then I've got two.
Hold on, before you leave that.
Okay.
I don't need to.
Yeah, there are good lawyers out there that can do this, okay? I do encourage people, go to multiple meetings if anybody else is having meetings, okay? I kind of agree with Joe, be careful, clicking with somebody with a catchphrase, especially one that involves his private parts. Watch out signing up on the internet and assume everybody knows what they're doing, okay? Go ahead.
Okay, and then the thing I wanted to ask you to address is and that is insurance proceeds and whether or not we are doing anything on insurance and the role of subrogation.
Now, I'm picking on this guy with his member on a billboard, but apparently he's some sort of an insurance guy. So if you want to get in a quarrel with your insurance company, have at it, okay? There are people that specialize in what's called first-party insurance claims, where you paid a premium, the insurance company's supposed to pay your damages, and they tool you around. We don't do that. We go after utilities, okay? We can help put you in with some people that we respect that do insurance stuff, but that's not what we specialize on. But we also don't take a fee on your insurance proceeds. You don't need Mikal Watts to get your insurance company to pay. You pay premiums for that, right? I'm here to get all the stuff the insurance doesn't cover, okay? Anybody else? Oh, go ahead.
You might mention subrogation.
Subrogation is when you pay that premium via a contract, they agree to pay you for your damages, but you have assigned to the insurance company the right to collect those damages from a third party, including the utility company. So you can't get the same money twice, okay? But that's okay. The insurance companies band together and file their own lawsuit in what's called a subrogation case. I know they're lawyers. We share experts. We're good buddies, okay? In a weird way, we're going to be aligned with your insurance companies to make it the utility's fault, okay? And it is their fault. But you don't have to pay them back. They're not going to come after your recovery to repay their subrogation. They're going to settle their own case, okay? Anybody else?
When you call, is it going to say unknown caller?
All right, well, the way I've handled that,
Because I don't answer my unknown caller.
yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I've got offices, depending on the case, all over the country, and that's a real problem because I don't answer phone calls that I don't know either. The way I've learned to do that is partner up with the very best lawyers in the locale where you are, and I've got them. Okay, so we'll probably do a lot of that from their offices, or I'll send you a text and tell you you're going to get a call from X number. Okay, it may be from San Antonio, but I outsource a lot of this stuff. You don't want me spending time chasing you down for the size of your frame and your, whatever. Okay, but what I've learned is get the cell phones, send a text. The number's going to come from this number. Okay, and then people trust it. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, guys. Well, I'm going to go be a Zantac lawyer for the next 5 weeks. These guys will be around. Please put the word out. If you want to do this, and if you don't, that's cool. I'm not a high pressure guy, but
there are very few law firms going after the Wendy Deuce fire case, and frankly, I was one of them not doing it until I did this 6 weeks of research. I really wanted to get with those censor guys to make sure we had the alarm bell, because it's not something that's 25 years old. It's 10 years old, and it's not something that's easy to do. But if they've got faults that precede the fire that day, and they've got 4, probably something they should have done. Okay?
And I'm gonna have to rush him to the airport and border, but we've got people back here, Nita and Scott will hang on to answer your questions. And we really do appreciate you coming, and please don't hesitate to ask us questions.
By the way, during the next 5 weeks, I haven't talked to these guys about it. We do a lot of Facebook meetings with folks and like that. And what I mean is, if I don't have time to come up here and do an in-person meeting, we may schedule one over Facebook or by Zoom or something like that where you can tell your neighbors about it. We'll get with you if you decide you want to do that. You know, we're going to have a request, you know, but I'm going to be pretty busy the next month. But these guys are going to, you know, this is why I wanted to get here today, is to get the word out in this town that this is a viable lawsuit. And I didn't know that 6 weeks ago last time I was here. I said I'd look into it. We did. Okay? All right, guys, thank you.
Thank you all.
I'm glad you're safe.